Now, totally switching gears. I'm going to go to the Hebrew Aleph-bet. This is how we can say, where do you get a numerical value for a word? So I sent you two sheets, and for those watching on the video, the two sheets are there. This sheet will be available figtreeteaching.com under Sea of Galilee Part 9. You'll find the document on the website, and you can download it. But this document is going to show you the Hebrew alphabet and then the numbers associated with it. And I'll blow this up in a minute to give you a better shot on the screen. We call ours the alphabet, Hebrew Aleph-bet, based on the first two letters. First letter being Aleph, second letter being bet. What you see if you have this document out, or if you download the document, is you get the Hebrew name for the letter, so Aleph. Then you have the Hebrew letter Aleph, the number associated with it, which is number 1. And then in Hebrew, particularly the very ancient Hebrew, was more pictographic. So each letter would also be a symbol or have a literal meaning to it. So for instance, Aleph is an ox or a bull, and the symbolic meaning is strength. So there's multiple connections. So let me blow this up. English is so abstracted. We don't think anything the way that these Eastern languages do. We don't think pictorially. We don't think symbolically. We have completely abstracted alphabet. So across the top, you'll notice at the top of this alphabet, you have Aleph, or the Aleph-bet. You have the Hebrew letter for Aleph and the number 1. It represents number 1. If you go down to the next one, you have a bet, or sometimes pronounced with a vet, like Avenu, which would be our father, as Av, but pronounced with more of a V sound. So there's the letter B, and that represents the number 2. It also means a house or a household. So then you can take these numbers and basically go straight through the alphabet. When you get to 10, and I'll show you when I go a little bit lower on the sheet, you'll see it goes from 10 to 20. So you just keep going, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, and you keep assigning numbers to it. If we go further down, now you get into, it starts skipping 10s, 20s, all the way up to, so there's 20, 40, here's 100, all the way up to the final Tav, the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which signifies 400. You know, none of us can do this in our brain, although if we spoke Hebrew and studied the Bible, we could. And we could easily look at a word and know what the numerical value is. So there's a technique in the first century, and even today, the rabbis will use it. It's called Gematria. And Gematria, it's a technique for biblical interpretation in the first century used by the sages and the rabbis, and they would see a numerical value of a word, then they would look at another word that has the same numerical value, and then they might connect those verses or connect the words to make a teaching, far beyond the way that we do our own biblical exegesis. But again, it would be inappropriate to be judgmental towards them, thinking that somehow they're getting it all wrong. It's just a different way of assessing the text, but it's called Gematria if you wanted to learn more about the interpretation process. All right, so let me show you the example, because what we want to do is say, how do we get 17 and 153 in Ezekiel? Well, the first step is know the alphabet and the numerical values, and then we can go over to, back to this sentence, we have Gedi and Aglaim. We noted that Gedi equals 17, Aglaim equals 153. How do we get there? How do we get to that point, right? Well, let me just show you, because that'll just help you understand the example. So if we take the word Gedi, it's only 3 letters in Hebrew. So we have Gimel, that's like a G, Dalet, that's a D, and a Yod. I put the I because it's Gedi, but it's a Yod. So we have Gimel, Dalet, and a Yod. And we would say Gimel is 3, a Dalet is 4, because it's the 4th letter in the Aleph-bet, and Yod is 10. Now, simple math here for those who can do math. 3 plus 4 is 7. Add 10, and what do we get as our numerical value for Getty? 17. So this is just the technique for adding up the numerical values. Now, if we take Eglaim, you have an Ein. Now, Ein is like another A sound, but a different letter. Ein, Gimel, G, Lamed, L, Yod. I put a Y there, and a Mem. Now I'm going to start getting much bigger numbers, right? So you have 70 is Ein, 3 is Gimel, we've seen that one. Lamed is 30, Yod again, 10, and then a Mem, which is the representative of water, is 40. Now, just real quick, a couple of weeks ago we talked water. Ma'im. Ma'im is the word for water. It's got two mems, and the symbol for water is the letter M, a mem. So you can see a lot of the words are very symbolic themselves. If you look at the symbol, and Ma'im would then say, there's something to do with water. Okay, now, again, if I look at all those numbers and say, well, I need to do some math here, I'm going to simplify it as best I can. I know 70 and 30. Well, that equals 100. That's easy for me to do. 40 and 10, that equals 50. So that gives me 150, and what I'm left over with is this one right here. So what's our numerical value for Eglaim? 153. So that's how you come up with this. You go back to this verse, and you'd say, aha, now I can see that in Hebrew, if I knew Hebrew and I knew I could do some simple math, now I can see that there's numerical values to this. Now here's what it's important to note. We know where En-Gedi is. That picture in the background is En-Gedi. We know where that is. Everybody travels there. It's a very popular spot for tourists. But where's Eglaim? Nobody knows. Which is a little bit strange, because in a land that you rely on springs for life, we have a spring mentioned that nobody knows where it's at. So if you ever see Eglaim on a map, there will be a question mark next to it, because we don't know. In fact, we're standing right here next to this waterfall. The professor is reading from Ezekiel. He's reading this verse. He says from En-Gedi, because he wants to show the class that we're standing at En-Gedi. He goes from En-Gedi to, well, that other place. That's how he said it to the class. He didn't say Eglaim, and he reads the verse. So I went up to him afterwards and I said, now this is a professor who's he's written atlases before, so he's published atlases. I said, where's Eglaim? Because I obviously knew there was controversy over it. And he just said, yeah, we don't know. There is no place that we know of called Eglaim. Now, then that leads you to the question, is Ezekiel then making up a word simply because its value is 153 that would stand out even more prominently, because you would say, wait, where's Eglaim? I don't know where this spring is. What's Ezekiel talking about? Scholars say, well, perhaps Ezekiel is using the word simply because of the 153, because we have a problem not being able to find Eglaim. So it's just a thought. We don't really know, because we don't know where Eglaim is, and Ezekiel is an ancient document. So just a thought about what Ezekiel is up to. Okay, now that we can do a little bit of the Gematria, now that we can take a Hebrew word and add it up and get a number, then scholars also will say, aha, there's another Hebrew phrase that adds up to 153. So the phrase sons of God in Hebrew also adds up to 153.